Yeah, if okay.
It's all right.
Good, good morning again, everybody. And yeah, the topic come to my mind like in last few years, we experienced a drought period, and many of farmers they have issues with the seasonal cover crops. If they don't grow, and what are you going to do? Are you going to, leave it? Uh, return back to cash crop, or you grow another year of cover crops, and then how about those kind of seeds you already put into the soil? What it's going to happen? And if I'm a farmer, if I were a farmer, I probably would be nervous. What should I do? So plus in past several years, many of conventional farmers even think about incorporate the multiple year alfalfa forage into their crop rotation. I thought this could be a learning thing that organic producers learn from, some of those conventional from those guys are there to try this and they feel it's pretty good. So I'm going to um, give some ideas about this. So let's go through. It may not fit in your farm if alfalfa doesn't grow in your area, but if it does, I think it worth a try. First, I would like to compare what the key differences between the seasonal cover crops. The first apparent difference is duration. Seasonal cover crops only grow for a season, and actually probably 2.5 months or 3 month uh, uh, period time. And multiple year alfalfa, uh, I mean that you would remain this kind of alfalfa for probably 3 or 4 years as part of your crop rotation. And as from the soil organic matter point of view, although the seasonal cover crops provide, you know, uh, nitrogen and increase the soil organic matter, but it's really a modest increase, and the increase organic matter is slow. Uh, but for the multiple year alfalfa, and you actually have this alfalfa, sitting in your soils for next 3 to 4 years, and depends on how long you want to leave it. And during this time, they continue to grow, and the organic matter accumulating uh, a little bit longer, and the continuous living roots, large biomass production, and plus the tillage is actually help mineralize of soil organic matter. If during those years you have your alfalfa, you won't till your soil. That really help to accumulate soil organic matter accumulation. And from root systems perspective, typically the seasonal cover crops they have a shallower or less developed root system, because even some of the varieties you put in the soil have a strong root system, but they don't have enough time to develop into a massive root systems. But for alfalfa, is a pretty amazing. It has a deep, could be up to 10 feet, extensive perennial roots that improve soil structures and water infiltration over time. Speaking of nutrient cycling, yeah, seasonal cover crops are excellent at scavenging residual nutrients in the top probably 6 to 12 inches of the soil. And legume crops would provide nitrogen credit for next 1 or 2 crops, depends on how your cover crop grow. But for alfalfa, the deep root extract nutrients from far lower soil horizons and bring them up and leave it in the topsoil. Alfalfa provide long-lasting nitrogen benefits. They normally would fix more nitrogen. Alfalfa is famous in or rank on the top of nitrogen fixer. They could fix up to on under ideal conditions, like what the Lethbridge AFC research found that alfalfa would be able to provide a potential 225 pounds per acre of nitrogen. But in general, it could be, even if it doesn't grow that great, still could fix about 150 pounds of nitrogen a year. But we will talk about that later. Not all those nitrogen will be put back into the soil, and then you might harvest those and bale the alfalfa and export out. And from soil erosion perspective, yeah, the seasonal cover crop is effective at providing temporarily ground cover to reduce the soil erosion from wind and water. But after you terminate it, plow it down, and you leave the bare soil on the surface, and at that time the soil is still accessible, vulnerable to the erosion. But for the alfalfa, offer year-round long-term soil protection and improve soil structure, as we said before, and making the soil more resistant to erosion, particularly during the winter time. The roots are still living, so they actually binding those soil particles together and make it more resistant to water erosion. And weed disease management, yeah, we all know that seasonal cover crops suppress weeds growth and break disease or insect cycles within the crop rotation. But if you look at the multiple year alfalfa, and it will stay there for a longer time, and they provide continuous control for weeds for several years, and it become more effective in disrupting the pests and a disease cycle due to the long break for the hosting plants. And particularly if you know that like a pathogen or insects that need to struggle survive that season. But if you have a longer break, and they won't be able to survive for several years. And the biomass production, the seasonal cover crops produce biomass, but because the growing season is so short, and as what I said, only 2.5 to 3 month period, so it got limited. And for alfalfa, you would have this whole year to grow, and even most of the above ground, you could cut and bale them and sell them as hay, but the root actually continue to grow, and some older roots they die, and those roots would add the biomass into the deep soils. Wherever they die, they decompose there. So those are the differences. And now let's look at the benefit of the conversion. First of all, it will be soil health. Multiple year of alfalfa will develop extensive root system, as what I said earlier, that could be up to 10 feet deep for every year. The roots continue to grow deeper, particularly if the soil is dry, and the roots continue to chase the moisture, soil moisture, go deeper and deeper. And in most cases, if the ideal condition occur, this some literature would say this alfalfa roots could go down to 18 feet deep to get soil moisture and some nutrients. But in general, if you leave that for 3 or 4 years, it could go down. Even the condition is not that kind of ideal. They could go down to 10 feet deep. And when those roots are going down, they actually help squeeze the particles together, and the roots would connect those particles together. And as they expand, the roots grow thicker, and they push the soil particles together and help soil to form structure. And once this the moisture, snow melt or rainfall, they would be able to follow this root hose and go down to a very deep horizons. So they help the water penetration. And yeah, all those things like enhanced nutrient cycling compared to seasonal crops, they are a lot better in that perspective. And the second is nutrient management. Alfalfa is a longer season in the long crop rotation, can provide significant amount of fixed nitrogen. Uh, Alfalfa can also mobilize soil phosphorus through root-released organic compounds that reduce soil pH around root systems. Last month, we talking about vascular uh, AMF, mycorrhizal fungi. And actually, alfalfa is a strong host of AMF. So that really help, build the biodiversity and you know, uh, release uh, the use root extrudation and release those organic compounds to dissolve the phosphorus from lower horizons and through the growth and bring them up to the topsoil and for other crops to use. And the third one is the resilience in advanced in adverse, not in advanced, in adverse environments. Establish alfalfa perform better than the seasonal cover crops. In many kind of cases, if a spring temperature is lower and the root, the alfalfa is already established, so they wake up early in the season. They don't have to, waiting for the soil temperature to rise to about 10 degrees, they would start taking off. And if you grow seasonal cover crop, it probably would wait for a certain kind of temperature. It will germinate and they take off early and they start growing longer. And also with the deep root system and symbiotic relationship with AMF, alfalfa has a better chance to grow under drought and low nutrient conditions. They actually could grow better. And continue to those benefits, like risks of cover crop failure, like what I said at the beginning. If you know you seeded your cover crop and there's nothing germinated, and what are you going to do? For this alfalfa, you just leave it. If we would talk about how to seed it, and hopefully that won't have that kind of issue. If springtime is drought, the alfalfa already have their root system developed, maybe not that deep, but they would be able to reach the soil moisture. The regular seasonal cover crop roots won't be able to, or the young seedlings won't be able to access. So they probably would persist a little bit longer and waiting for the soil moisture to come. Yeah, so with this kind of uh, conversion, you would have for sure a good cover crop. So you could actually decide when to terminate it. And it depends on the situation. You could, if it's really good, you need to return to return to cashew crops. You could terminate it in the second year. Or if you want to grow longer, you actually could extend it that to fourth year. Depends on what your management requirement. And also workload management. It will reduce the workload during busy time, like spring seeding. And because those alfalfa are already in the field, they grow their own. You don't have to seed it every year. And you could focus on you could focus your attention to seeding your cash crops. And during the fall, it's same. So you actually could pre-plan, okay, I got those field crop need to be harvested. I could cut this alfalfa a week earlier or whatever and help to stagger farm operation and utilize labor and equipment more efficiently throughout the season. An economic benefit, alfalfa as a forage crop offer an alternative income stream through hay and grazing. And if you got that opportunity, you could arrange grazing if you don't have livestock, you could ask your neighbors if they have livestock, they could come to graze this and do some kind of financial arrangement. So during this time, or if you don't have that, and then you could cut them and bale them, sell them as a hay. And in the past few years, and I think particularly in those difficult years, if the farm income, if it's dry, income is influenced, and if you have a good forage for sale, that probably would help you to go through this difficult time. Um, you know, and the other benefit is once you terminate it after several years, and this soil is loaded with nitrogen, it's not surprised to have a nitrogen. I mean, if you do soil testing, you could see 150, over 100 ppms of nitrogen in your soil that are free for crop to take. So that would be easily to support 2 to 3 years of cash crop production instead of only a short time nitrogen fixation for with the green manure crop, which probably last 1.5 seasons. Yeah, and when you thinking about grow this, turn your seasonal cover crops into a multi-year alfalfa forage, and then you need to redesign your crop rotation. The multiple year rotation plan, that would incorporate alfalfa for a specific period. Depends on your farm situation, anywhere from 2 years to 4 years. A forage production is a key part, and from the you could first year you could underseed alfalfa into a cereal crop, and after you still have a cash crop that year. Many farmers actually use this kind of operation for a long time. They really like even the alfalfa is small. They do nitrogen fixation. Basically, it could support its own needs. It doesn't really consume the soil nitrogen, which that will be support the other cereal crop growth during the first year. And if a situation is right, and alfalfa actually would share the nitrogen fixed, but with the cash crop like the cereals through the AMF network. It's pretty amazing. After the first years, after the cash crop harvested, and you still have some time before the frost, killing frost. So this alfalfa would continue to grow for a while and then go to dormant when the temperature drop below zero. And the next spring, it start early, particularly if you have the moisture, soil moisture. Hopefully, if you have the snowfall, and those alfalfa would standing there and help to trap snow, and instead of snow being blown away, and they would be able to slightly increase your soil moisture for the next spring. So the year 2, you could, got 1 or 2 cuts of alfalfa, generally 2, and then, leave it to grow until the third year. You could, yeah, continue to go through this kind of alfalfa cutting, or bedding, or forage setting, all those things. And year number four, and you could have one cut and then terminate it. And fifth year, soil is loaded with nitrogen. Uh, and then you could grow either wheat, or if you grow wheat, you would have a better wheat uh, yield and quality as well. The nitrogen, the protein content of that wheat ear should be great. And if you want to grow flax, yeah, after you know the Saskatchewan insurance have shown that if you grow flax after a termination of cover crops, the yield could be increased by 50 or greater than 50%. So that would be a great year for you to harvest those kind of profit. And then first 2 years, whatever crop you grow, it shouldn't be a problem. You got it like if it's uh, like 200 pounds of nitrogen in your soil, and then you would be easily to support a very good crop production for first 2 years. That would be year 5 and 6, and year 7, you could actually, if you feel like your soil nitrogen level is slowed down a little bit, you actually could grow intercrop. The good example would be like oats and a pea. So pea would be able to fix its own nitrogen and leave the soil available nitrogen to the oats. Then you would have another good crop. And like a year 8, your soil may not have enough of nitrogen for supporting a good uh, cereal crop. But that year number 8, you could grow, let's say, a lentil, and lentil would be able to fix nitrogen for itself. And then you go back to, this rotation. I think if this rotation really worked on your farm, you could carefully manage this, like, put it 1/3 of this, you would have like a quarter of your land growing alfalfa all the time. And then you rotate this on your farm. So each year you don't have to look after this alfalfa land, focus your energy, your resources on those cash crops, and then give you some break, not really make you that kind of busy. And in the meantime, you could use the summertime to make some money on the cutting alfalfa. Uh, yeah, that's what the justification for that. And now we are coming to seeding our alfalfa agronomy. And first of all, seeds, you should be able to, I think in Saskatchewan, it's easy to find the seeds. There are so many alfalfa seeds growers in the province. If you can't find organic, I would suggest you buy the certified seeds, because they have a better germination rate. They don't have that kind of weeds contamination. They do a lot better. Particularly, we have so many alfalfa seeds growers in Saskatchewan. I mean, even organic. You should be able to find some producers nearby your farm, and make sure, well, in general, if they could grow it, it would grow on your farm too, because you are in the same kind of climate situation. And the seeding rate is pretty straightforward. You could seed from 12 to 20 pounds per acre. So when the soil is drier or it's a sandy soil, use a higher seeding rate. And if you underseed your alfalfa to a cereal crop, if soil moisture situation is good, you could reduce the seeding rate to 8 to 15 pounds per acre. The seeding rate is would start, I want to explain this one to you. This was done by Mike Rankin at the University of Wisconsin. What his study basically tells, if your soil is good, the seeding rate doesn't really influence the eventual results that much. And for example, what he did, he put 15 pounds per acre alfalfa seeds into the soil. And based on that kind of seeding rate, and the 15 pounds will be equivalent to put 75 seeds per square feet. And after 3, 4 weeks, and only like 48, 40, 45 seedlings coming up, and about 60% germination rate. So this seedlings won't survive for all of them would survive. As the time keep going longer, the plant would die, continues thinning. So 3, 4 weeks, you would have like 45 seedlings. By next spring, and you would have like 25 plants left. And many of them die during these times. And but this is a seedling very tiny, and this 12 month, going into the first year full year production, and the total number of plants reduced to 25, and this plant number continued to decrease to second year. But in the second year, after second full production year, I mean beginning of second full year, full production year, the total number could be dropped to 8 or 9 per square feet. But you know what? You don't need to care about that. Once established, the plant would be a lot bigger. This year's 12 months plants will be a lot bigger than this, and the second year's the root becomes so deep and so strong, and they have so many branches developed. The biomass production of these 9 plants is even higher than this 25. So your ground is covered, and if there's any space, the alfalfa will send more branches and to cover it. So it's not really an issue. So at this, if your soil support those growth, but if it's not, that will be another story, and we'll talk about that at a later time. The seeding time, actually, alfalfa is pretty flexible to, you could seed it in spring, early spring from May to early June, or as soon as the soil is workable. Uh, you know, you can also seed sometimes in early August, or from early August to early September, if adequate soil moisture is available. So they need the soil moisture to germinate. So the best way to seed it is, well, for alfalfa as a seasonal crop, can be seeded as a part of a multi-species cover crop, but biomass and nitrogen contribution are limited because they have a short growing season. You terminate if you seed it in beginning of June or later of May, and you might harvest. You might terminate it in middle of July, or like that time you start flowering, and only like 2.5 months or 3 months. And there is another way you could seed, which is more common and it's also recommended, alfalfa underseeded to oats or wheat. Seeding alfalfa with your cereal crops, or shortly after the grain crop planted. Either way will be good. And if when the cereal crop start germinating, you could seed, that's okay. And actually, if you have other crops, they particularly cereals, when they start germinating, they probably would take off pretty earlier, and they would be able to help to protect those alfalfa seedlings. So if you are underseeding your alfalfa, you could choose to have a slightly lower seeding rate. Yeah, another way of seeding, like what I mentioned earlier time, like August or September, and you could underseed it to established crop. Uh, yeah, the ideal condition is there's enough soil moisture. You have to have soil moisture to allow a good alfalfa germination and emergence. Yeah. Uh, yeah, after you see this, they start establishing. There's not much you need to do, and everything is you just leave it grow, and particularly the organic systems. And if you underseed it to the cover, underseed it to a cash crop cereal, and then you don't need to do anything. You just leave it. And after your first cover crop, after your cash crop is harvested, leave it to grow in your field, and they would continue grow until the frost. And then second year you don't even need to care about it. You just need to prepare cotton and bedding and try to find buyers. That's all you need to do. Make a few phone calls. Then to the third or fourth year, when you decide to terminate it, and then you could go through here. Alfalfa stand termination actually rely on tillage tools such as a moldboard plow or a chisel plow with overlap sweeps to completely cut the alfalfa roots. So in that kind of case, you try to basically bury all the green parts under the ground, not to shoot. Earlier we talking about we should leave 30% of this green part over there. You don't want this to regrow. And sometimes if your tool is not that great, you might need to go through 2 or 3 passes to complete terminate the alfalfa. It's pretty tough. It got very developed root system. If you don't completely destroy the root, and then they probably would grow back. The termination can be anytime, but most uh, good. I think probably the best termination time is a fall termination, and we recommend that time. The advantage of fall termination include an early start residual decomposition. If you terminate it in spring, you probably want to immediately after termination, you want to seed a cash crop, but you do need to leave some time for the alfalfa to decompose before they could release nutrients for your cash crop to absorb. So spring termination may not allow time for the decomposition, and then you may end up your cash crop seedling compete nitrogen or nutrients with the soil microbes, which also use nitrogen for doing their work to decompose organic matter. So fall termination, you would have, uh, a couple of months or even many weeks before winter, and which allow this plant residue to decompose probably springtime when the temperatures start rising up and the soil moisture is good. The decomposition would continue because soil microbes never stop working. And the summer termination is also, like possibly after a hay cut in July or June, then you could terminate it, but may require follow-up tillage because like a spring and a summer, the plant is in a growth vigor they have a very high intention to survive. So they would be able to regrow, and it would be a little bit difficult to do a complete kill by plowing. So you may need two passes. But fall is better because after you terminate it, the soil become a little bit drier and the cold temperatures are coming, so they don't have plants start going into the dormant stage. They don't have that kind of strong living tendencies, so it's slightly different. And it's not always good. And here are some potential downside things we need to consider, we need to pay attention to. So first one is the soil moisture depletion. Because alfalfa use a significant amount of water, the deep root of alfalfa can even extract large amount of water from the lower horizons and leave soil super dry. If you are in the dry area and you don't have enough soil moisture, and this may not fit that well. And because after you terminate, or if you're like in brown soil in swift current area, need to be careful. And weeds overgrowth. This would happen when the alfalfa is not established well in first year. If you have those bare patches and both the seasonal and both the annual and perennial weeds will be able to invade in that area. So if that happen, and you probably should think to reseed alfalfa or do some kind of weed control. Also, if your soil condition is not that great, and increase your seeding rate to the higher end of the suggested range, so that would probably would be able to produce more seedlings that would survive. Some of them would survive during the difficult time of first year. Nutrient depletion. This is a very big concern for alfalfa bedding, because those kind of nitrogen fixed, they stay in the plant bodies, and you cut it, you belt, you ship them out. Those nitrogen and phosphorus will be gone, will be removed from your field. So need to be careful on that. But as the new Canadian organic standard is going to come out in March this year, in 3 months period time, and then I think the struvite will be allowed for organic producers to use. So yeah, if you could buy some of those, like struvite, and they contain a significant amount of phosphorus, which are available to the plants. It's not like phos rock that really is less effective. The struvite is very effective. They are slow release, but they are plant available. And if you could access that and do some investment for that, that'd be great. And many people, have concerns about financial implications, because we grow cash crops. If we don't grow cash crop for a couple of years, and well, although I have this kind of hay, I never did that before. I never know how to sell it. Those are some worries. But many of those guys who grow this alfalfa in their rotation feel it was pretty good. Maybe in certain period of time they don't perform that well, but they may not be able to compare with a cash crop if the cash crop grow really well. But You know, if it's a drought year and alfalfa, if you have established alfalfa in your field, you would definitely have some hay to produce that year. And even, all the cash crop failed, you still have some cash flow there. And particularly after, alfalfa is terminated, and then the first 2 years, you should have a payout years because you could have a very good crop yield and quality. And residual management is another concern, because some of those alfalfa roots system, when you terminate it, you pull them, you cut them, pull them on the surface, and in springtime, and those become a mat, leave this kind of residue mat on the soil surface, which actually is wet uh, and cooled, cold. So that would really reduce delay your crop seeding in springtime. So you need to prepare for that, and those are need to be considered. Yeah, that's all what I have to say.
Done, Lee. I'm gonna just stop recording.